Hey there and welcome to Matt's Garage. Today I'm going to show you how to change the lower ball joint in a Mercedes W124. So other Mercedes of a similar era would probably be quite a similar procedure. And I got this replacement part here. I'm not going to try and pronounce that brand name, but that was the recommended brand. And this is actually quite a big job. You have to take the strut completely out. You don't have to take the brakes off, I found. I think some people do that, but you don't need to. And you need to take this face screw out of the rotor. That's actually the first thing we're going to do. Of course, you want to take your wheel off first, support your vehicle up safely, all that. And it's 17mm on those lug bolts generally. But that is a 5mm Allen right there, so we'll start with getting that out. Okay, I don't really recommend an impact on these, but I just had this one out so I know it's not stuck in there and it won't break off. Just make sure you get the bit, seat it in there really good. And you're going to want to just go like this. And what that does is actually push back your brake pads a little bit, and you'll see why later. Okay, now we're going to get these three 19mm fasteners. So there's a bolt and a nut in the top there. And then back here on each side, I do have a separate video on changing these struts. I just put these on, but one there and one there. And you can turn the steering to either direction to gain better access to these bolts. You got to make sure to unclip these wires here. You don't need to take the clip off or anything, just unclip the wires and they'll all stay. The brake hose stays, all that. And you will need, I think you could do it without a spring compressor. You do need a ball joint press. That's essential. And you want to have a jack that can go under your lower control arm so that you can move that up and down. That's pretty vital to be able to do that. Also, you really want to have a very powerful impact. Like this little one here won't budge most of the fasteners on this job. So I have this big 700 foot-pound one. Also, the actual fastener down on the ball joint is right down in here. It's a nut and a bolt, and they're both 19mm head as well. This is kind of hard to show you all this, but it's more when we get to actually pressing out the old part and pressing in the new one. That's what I really want to show you. And one thing I really want to show you is these are directional. You see that? They have a slot that direction. It doesn't go near as far that direction, and so you got to pay attention to that. It actually has, you see that little triangle cut out of there. Okay, I think you can pretty much see what I'm doing from that angle. And I'm just going to go around and put some penetrating oil on the exposed threads where I can. Another thing, you will have to take out the steering stop. You need a 17mm deep socket to get that steering stop out. You might be able to get it off with a wrench without doing that, but if you want to use an impact or even a ratchet and get a socket on there, you'll find you need to do that. You can see it has Loctite on it, lots of Loctite. Now, as I've pointed out in other videos, you never want to hold against an impact with a ratchet. You will ruin the ratcheting mechanism, so just have a ring wrench like that works best. Get on there right there. Okay, I think here is where I need to put a jack under the control arm, and you can also compress the spring if you want. I'm going to go ahead and compress the spring. I think it makes it easier. Now with these, you want to oil them. Basically every use, oil them and they'll last forever. That's why they strip out on people, they don't oil them. Now what I really like is these Ford jacks. I collect these things and they work great. You'll see why in a minute here, because I have the end of the handle from one in my drill, and it's just about the easiest way to jack up a car. I like to go right on that weld there. The new part comes with a new bolt, so normally you shouldn't beat on the end of a bolt on the threads, but in this case it doesn't matter. So we won't do anything more with that right now. We'll just focus on getting this strut removed. These 19mm bolts, they have a washer and they normally have a lot of Loctite on them from the factory and can be very challenging to get out. So I'll just turn the wheel the other way and get the back bolt now. Okay, now I'm just going to go ahead and straighten up the wheels again. So I'll just take out my upper strut bolt here. Again, 19mm. Again, it has a washer on both sides this time. You may need to just give that a few love taps. Really. If you do have to wrap on it, just thread the nut back on till it's just about got the bolt sticking all the way through it. And then what I like to do, so I don't make a real mess of that even, take my 1/2 inch extension and put on there. There we go. Now I think we're better off to let our jack down now and take the pressure off that strut, because for the strut the full droop is going to have the least pressure on it, but the strut is not really spring loaded. It's like hydraulic spring. You can press it down by hand. It's not going to spring in your face or anything crazy. There we go. Okay, we're going to go ahead and get this strut out of the way. It's a 22mm nut and a 7mm Allen key in the center if you don't have an impact. If you do, just hold it from below like I'm doing here. And that will just drop right out of that mount now. I just got to get the bogging part of it worked off the hub assembly there. Okay, if you have a medium-sized pry bar like this, that works best, and you can work in the wheel well here. And you just want to get under these ears here, like that. And you can work, there's a centering pin back there that you just have to work it off. And you just go like that and it will. I'll warn you though, this whole assembly is going to flop, and I have some blocks ready to put under it. I'm going to get them set up. You got to be careful that you don't stretch out your brake hose. Pay attention to it at all times. Okay, so that is free. So you just gently pull this down out of the rubber up there. It's a good time to change your struts anyway. Oh, and that came down. That just clips up there. So we'll just put this aside. I just put these struts on. Awesome struts, by the way. If you're looking for struts for your W124, these KYB Excel Gs, I highly recommend them. Okay, we're pretty well down to it now. If we can just get this worked off of here, that is the goal here. And if you're not in a rusty area, it might come up fairly easy. I'm probably going to end up having to pry on it, but we'll just see here. Now this is why I had you loosen off your brake rotor, because this shield has to bend out quite a bit to clear this control arm as this slides off the lower ball joint, and it actually will contact the rotor and still want to move more. So that's why I had you loosen that rotor off so that the rotor moves out and allows this shield to move out. So that's really necessary. That really held me up on the other side for quite a while because I didn't believe that Mercedes would make it like that, but they did. I'm just going to try and help this a little with a pry bar, but the whole time I got to make sure I'm keeping my brake hose slack. Oh, this is working now. So we still got our tie rod connected back here, and it's just going to kind of hang by the tie rod. So now you can see a lot better what we're doing, and our brake hose is nice and slack, so we have less worries. So make sure you turn it over like that. I should have done that right away after I took that strut off. And I'm going to pry this a little more. That's right where I'm prying, right between the two halves. So if there's epoxy in there, like mine had, just chip it out of there. So like I thought, it's mostly just this shield that's holding it on at this moment. So close. There we go. Sweet victory. Okay, so here is what you're left with when you get it all stripped down. This is what you want. So you have room to work right here. I did try on the other side, leaving the strut in place and things like that, and there's just no room for that. It's a challenging enough job when you get it down to this point. So what you want to do is get that boot off to start with. So you get those retainer springs off, you can work the rubber up. Normally that's what goes when your ball joints go to rubber, will fail and then all the grease leaks out and it dries up. But in this case the rubber is still good, but these are original to the car, I think, and this car is over 300,000 kilometers, so they're just getting slop in them and the grease is drying up. Yeah, this one's way worse than my driver's side one. Okay, now you can see really clearly how you have to have that orient in there. It needs to have maximum movement this way, because when this goes up and down, and these cars have a lot of suspension travel, this needs to move a lot. Now, Mercedes has special tools to press this out, I guarantee you. I had to modify and make some tools for my press kit here, and I'll show you that. Okay, so what you got there is exactly what this is, and it presses down out the bottom, and there's not much to press on there. And then of course it presses, the new one presses up from the bog, and that's a lot easier operation. So I will show you how I set this up. Okay, now the big problem is my kit doesn't include anything to press on that. So I found this piece of exhaust tubing, and it presses on there perfect, as you can see. I don't know if that's exhaust tubing or conduit. Either way, it works. So I will give that a measure here and let you know what it measures. And then for the bottom, I had to cut out this relief in the piece that came in my kit. These are about a $50 kit, by the way. You can get them on Amazon. And that is to fit there. Otherwise, this goes on a big angle. But with that there, it comes up under these 2 ears here. So that works. And then it's just a juggling match to get this all set up. This isn't quite straight. I actually, this was just a scrap I picked out of the scrap heap real quick yesterday. But it worked. So I'm going to use it again. I had this. I had this right there. And then these again, they say don't use an impact on these. Well, good luck getting this out and back in without an impact on one of these. So just oil it real good. And then your threads will last even if you use an impact on it. Oil is your friend. Okay, now the bottom, like that, you see that? Fits there nice. Pretty well maxing out this tool to do this. Make sure you get everything lined up squarely before you put any pressure on anything. Okay, there is your setup. And it does not hurt to put a little heat around here. I'm going to. You don't want to get it red hot or anything because you could ruin the quality of the steel there. But just, if you make it warm, that can't hurt. It will just let that slide out of there a little easier. Okay guys, I'm just going to put a little pressure on it. Make sure everything's square. And then I'll apply a little heat. And then we'll just drive it right out of there. Okay. Got a little pressure on there. Now I'll warn you, you don't want to get too much heat on there because you could actually blow up that ball joint, especially if it's still pretty tight. What happens is the grease heats up underneath of that and it can blow them apart with extreme force. It's a very dangerous thing. So beware of that. I just got that warm, like see, I can still touch it. I'm not melting my glove. So understand that, I'm just getting it warm. So there we have it. You can see how rusty that is. So maybe if you're in California or something where your car's not all rusted up like that, this might be a lot easier job. Now I got this little wire brush that I'm going to put in my drill. Clean inside the bore a little bit there. You don't want to grind in there or anything, but a wire brush won't remove any material, just the rust. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm actually going to clean up this whole end of the control arm here and just paint it up. See, there we go. Clean that up nicely. Now I'll just blow this off with some compressed air and hit it with some black spray paint. I just got out my caliper here to measure this for you guys, so you know what size of pipe you have to get if your kit doesn't have something appropriate. So inside diameter is 37.65 millimeters, and in inches that is 1.474. Outside inches is 1.67, and in millimeters it's about 42.5. It has to drop inside this hole, and it has to, you can see it presses right there, but there's another step there that it's not going to sit on nicely, so you need to have it so it'll fit right there. This is just perfect, and I just happen to have it in my scrap heap. Don't worry about getting it in the bore. Spray paint is so thin it's not going to make the difference. It'll just act like a lubricant if anything. Okay, it's time to go back together here. We've got our new part, and you just absolutely have to make sure that little notch has to be centered up in this side of the control arm. Well, I guess it could be either way. That is to indicate that that is the direction of that notch in there, but this has to be centered either here or here. I just center it right here. It lines up between the 2 and the 0 under there if you're looking at that. So it just comes up from the bottom like that. And we're going to have to press it up in. See, this actually has 2 notches, so one will be lined up here, one will be here. The original part just has 1 notch. And then, as you can see, there is a new bolt and nut provided. One other little tip. This boot is often up in that notch. That notch is for the bolt to go through. And it might not be sealed, and then you could drop rust down inside there. So just take your fingers and push that boot right down. You don't want to press on this. This is just like a tin cover. So, okay guys, I got this all figured out. This has enough room to clear that, and it fits real nice there. So that's what you want. And then this set up here, plenty of room to allow that to come up inside. And as you can see, it clears that. You want to make sure that whatever you put over here has enough clearance to allow this to come through it. And then of course you got to keep it centered on here, otherwise it could still catch and tear the boot or something, so be careful of that. Okay guys, I think we're ready to press this in. I always spend a lot of time confirming that everything is lined up perfectly, because that is key. And if you press something in crooked and jam it up halfway, that can take a lot of time too, so I'd rather just make sure. Okay, I'm going to go straight on now, and you'll hear the sound change. You'll hear the sound of the impact change. Basically, the vibrations going through here will change when that boggins out. So listen for that. Okay, now this may not be spun the right way. If it isn't, take a pair of pliers and just grab this, and you can just spin it. You want it, facing that way. So when you drop this on and have the wheels turn straight, that bolt will go right in. So that's the next step actually, is to drop that back on, and then we'll get the strut back in and just keep going from there. Actually, because I have this steering turned, I'm going to turn this to match. The key here is to pull out the dust shield so that you can get the angle right, and then it will go down. There we go. It dropped right on. Probably went a little too far. Oh, it's pretty close. Instead of messing up the threads on the new bolt, I'm just going to run the old one through just to get everything lined up, and then once it drops through, I'll put the new one in. There we go. That went right through. Let's use a screwdriver to tap her back through. Now the new one should slide right in. And we'll just put this on loosely for now and get the strut back in. Okay, so this stretches up over a couple of years on the bottom of the strut mount. We'll get that up in there first. Okay, if you've installed that properly, it should hang there on its own, and you can even pull down on it. It won't come down. I'll just be using my little impact for assembly. It's just about right for assembly work. On this hinge bolt, make sure you have a washer on each side, and then the bolt actually comes through from the back of the car towards the front of the car, which is kind of backwards, but that's how it's supposed to be. I like to have both of these bottom ones tight before I tighten the hinge one. I just put the hinge one in loosely. And you want to put this little 5mm Allen screw back in the rotor face. Now, one thing, make sure that this dust shield is not contacting your rotor anywhere. Okay, I'm just going to finish off the job by torquing the wheel up to 80 foot-pounds. And I also like to recheck it after an initial test drive. One other thing you guys should do, if you did what I did with the rotor and kind of rocked it, what I did there is pry back the brake pad. So when you get in, you might find your pedal goes down a bit. So you just want to pump that up and get full pedal pressure before you put the car in gear. Okay guys, that's all there is to changing the lower ball joints in your Mercedes W124. Thanks a lot for watching Matt's Garage. Don't forget to like and subscribe and have yourself a great day.